Good evening, everybody. Any moment now, we are expecting remarks from President Trump after his fiery speech today at the United Nations General Assembly in New York City. I'm Brian Enton in for Elizabeth Vargas tonight. Hope everybody's having a good day. Just hours after a combative speech when Trump slammed open borders, climate change, the United Nations, and its escalator and teleprompter, the president is now going to speak again. And by the way, the escalator and teleprompter thing was a little strange. Right when he was about to step onto that escalator, it just stopped working, and then the same thing happened with the teleprompter. Is it just a weird coincidence or something more? Now he's hosting a reception with dozens of world leaders. We will bring you the latest developments as they unfold, and we will bring you President Trump live as soon as he speaks. But first tonight, Jimmy Kimmel's return to late night. In just hours, Jimmy Kimmel Live will be back on ABC's airwaves 6 days after Disney suspended the show over jokes about Charlie Kirk. Kimmel has been mostly silent throughout this controversy, but we are expecting him to finally address it all tonight in just hours. How he does it at this point is anyone's guess. In a moment, I'm going to speak with another ABC star whose show was also taken off the air over controversial comments and never came back. Roseanne Barr. She will share her thoughts on Kimmel's brief suspension and what she calls a double standard compared to her own firing years ago at ABC. That's coming up in just a minute, but let's start with NewsNation's Alex Capriello. Alex, Kimmel's coming back, but not everyone is going to be able to watch his return.
Yeah, that's right, Brian. The executives at both Sinclair and Nexstar, which, of course, I should note, owns NewsNation, they're sticking behind their decision to preempt Kimmel tonight and for the foreseeable future and instead show regular news programming. Both those companies control more than 25% of ABC affiliates all across the country. Nexstar says it's standing behind its decision and wants assurance that political commentary will be respectful moving forward for all the markets that it broadcasts out of. In the meantime, reaction is pouring in, including from FCC Chair Brendan Carr, who's been at the center of this conversation following Kimmel's controversial monologue last week after Carr vaguely threatening to pull broadcast licenses for anyone who disparaged Charlie Kirk or the MAGA movement. Now, Carr is downplaying his role in it all, saying it was never an FCC issue, but instead a decision that local TV broadcasters made to protect the peace and to serve the public. He also blames Democrats for engaging in a campaign to smear the Trump administration and deflect blame from Disney and TV broadcasters. It's, of course, a stark reversal from previous tweets Carr made back in 2022 when he supported political satire as a form of free speech and ironically commented that powerful people will always target it for censorship. Now that Kimmel's back, Hollywood is rejoicing after its pressure campaign seemingly worked. America listened as more than 500 of Hollywood's elite asked the public to support free speech. We watched also as Disney stock dropped and Disney Plus subscribers canceled their plans. And of course, more trouble might be ahead. For those who actually stood behind Disney Plus, well, today they got another surprise. The company announcing price hikes beginning next month. That on top of a new chorus of Republicans who say they're now going to boycott Disney for actually bringing Kimmel back. Brian.
All right, Alex, thank you. The show apparently seems like it will go on for Jimmy Kimmel, but that was not the case for a different comedian back in 2018. Roseanne Barr, she did not get a second chance from ABC after controversial comments. Instead, she was straight up canceled. Barr's hit sitcom Roseanne was rebooted in March 2018 with great success. The numbers were insane. More than 18 million people tuned in for the debut. Those are massive numbers that TV doesn't see anymore. But ABC, they decided to cancel the show just 2 months later after Barr made offensive comments about former President Obama's top aide in a tweet. Earlier, I asked about Kimmel's suspension and her own firing from ABC. What do you think about Jimmy Kimmel being pulled off the air, Roseanne, and what do you make of ABC putting him back on tonight?
Well, I guess he got a 6-day suspension. Just like when Whoopi Goldberg came out with her disgusting comments on the Holocaust, she got a 2-week suspension. It just shows how they think. I got my whole life ruined, my no forgiveness, and all of my work stolen, and and called a racist for time and eternity, for racially misgendering someone, and so it just shows how they think. It's a double standard, and so whatever. Jimmy purposely lied, and that's for you get your hand slapped for 6 days for that.
Do you think there's anything Jimmy could do tonight? Should he apologize? Like, is there anything he could do, you think, that could, make you happy, make people sort of forgive him?
Well, I think he'll cheer himself on, and his fans, all, what is it, 2,000 of them, they'll feel heartened and, like they won another battle against Trump and the people of the United States. So it'll be a big celebration. Oh, he's back, and he'll double down. That's what they do. They'll see it as a victory.
I remember when you were canceled, I think Jimmy Kimmel first put out kind of like a negative tweet saying, like,
Well, he called me a racist. And even though I said repeatedly, which they repeatedly censored, that it was a mistake, I thought that the woman was a white woman from Iran, which, I forget their racist separation of people and their categories, their racist categories that they put everybody into. But for some reason. He called me a racist. And, even though he himself had appeared in blackface on their network many times, but along with his girlfriend, Sarah Silverman, wearing blackface too, and Joy Behar too. But anyway, they understand racism in a way different way than I do, I suppose, as the left understands everything in a way different way than myself and 80 million voters. But, they are the arbiters of taste, of course, but, and racism and every other ism. But, they have their own world, their own planet, their own agenda that I don't quite understand. But I guess if they continually lose money and viewers, that's good to them.
Yeah,
I don't get it.
Your podcast is great. I watched your comedy special. So you've been busy, but have any of the big networks ever approached you again, or did you just get totally written off?
Oh yeah, and erased from history, from the history of feminism, which that cracks me up. I'm never mentioned in any thing about women who are pioneers in media. I'm never mentioned there. I'm never mentioned in anything anymore. I'm like, I've been socially erased everywhere. And, it's just amazing how things work. But, people I actually opened doors for or gave careers to, they never mention me, especially when they talk about censorship, which is hilarious.
What would you say to Jimmy Kimmel if he happens to hear this?
Well, he won't ever hear it because they live in a bubble where all alternate views or any truth is kept from them. I'm a troll. And, I love to troll. And so I trolled on Jimmy. I go, gee, Jimmy, if you would have defended me, maybe this wouldn't have happened to you. But, they never defend anything right. They only defend everything wrong.
Do you think Jimmy Kimmel going back on the air, though, is a sign that in a way that cancel culture maybe is going in the right direction, that things have changed?
No, it's not going in the right way. But I think, as their viewership tanks, they congratulate themselves.
What do you think, though, about like the company I work for, Nexstar, which owns NewsNation, but also owns like a ton of local TV stations? Nexstar has said that they're not going to put Jimmy Kimmel back on tonight.
I love Nexstar. I just love independent media. They've broken away from the big, how can I say this? They've decentralized information, and that's what America wants and needs. They are not going to listen to liars that are gleefully lying, saying that the assassin was MAGA. That's what Jimmy Kimmel said.
Are there some liberals that you still like? Do you have I feel like you have a lot of liberal friends, right?
Oh my God, my whole damn family's libtards. Of course, I still love them. They're gay and libtard and every other thing in my family. Of course, I still love them. I try to smack some sense into them, which I was going to say. I do get in their face. I do pray for them. I love them. But I'm like, how can you be under this horrible mind control? Look at the facts. Can't you witness what's happening around you and in the world? But they are so mind controlled that they just can't see it. Although I do think that their outrageous, inhuman behavior after the Charlie Kirk assassination has awakened quite a few of them up to the fact that, oh my God, look at what ghouls are on our side. I don't want to be on the side of ghouls cheering for death and mocking good people. Even though we may not agree with everything they said. I didn't agree with everything Charlie said, but my God, he had such guts to go out there and engage in conversation. Two things fascists don't like: humor and dialogue.
All right, so a couple of things to point out there. Jimmy Kimmel did comment on Roseanne's cancellation, but he never directly called her a racist. In May 2018, when joking about Roseanne on his show, Kimmel said, quote, ABC decided to cancel their highest-rated show, Roseanne, following a tweet in which Roseanne compared an African-American woman, a former advisor to President Obama, to an ape, which did not sit well with ABC management or anyone with a brain. And while both Kimmel and comedian Sarah Silverman have worn blackface in sketches in the past, which you heard Roseanne talk about there, they didn't do it on ABC. It was actually on Comedy Central. And they both also publicly apologized, as did Roseanne back then with the controversy that she was wrapped up in. All right, a lot to talk about here. Let's bring in our panel. Geraldo Rivera is a NewsNation correspondent at large, and we've also got Steve Krakauer, a NewsNation media contributor. Good to see you both. Geraldo, let's start with you. We'll get to Roseanne in a second, but you know we're going to see Kimmel in a couple of hours now when he returns tonight. What do you think is going to happen? Do you think he's going to apologize?
I certainly hope so. That's what I have been advocating, Brian. Nice to be with you and Steve. I think that what he did was ill-timed, but it was factually incorrect. It was inflaming a very tender situation in the country. He did something that I'm sure he regrets. I hope he regrets. And I hope that he says he is sorry. Because to hurt so many people, it was clear by the funeral memorial Sunday night that Charlie Kirk was a very important person to many millions of Americans. It was clear that his message not only resonated, but they were deeply affected by his life and certainly by his murder. And it's time, you know, I guess, to move on from that. But he did it. He should say he is sorry. If he apologizes, he can start clean. Whether or not the stations decide to put him on the air or not, that's a business decision that they will make. But at least he can clean his own mess up. He can start with a blank slate, the new life, because what he did was terrible. Censorship sucks. I hate censorship, and yet so does inciting hatred suck. Brian.
Steve, I mean, obviously people who don't like Kimmel are not going to like him. That's not going to change. But is there some way that he could apologize that you think everyone would just move on from this?
I don't think everyone's going to move on. I think that, if anything, what last week showed us was, without getting too in the weeds, I think it was a window into the soul of the person who hosts a late night show on ABC. And because just think about this, I don't expect an apology. I think maybe he's going to say he's sorry if he offended some people, you know, the normal mealy mouth stuff. But I think he's going to get stuck in the weeds on, well, you know, I wasn't actually saying that it really was a MAGA person who killed Charlie. That's not what's important. What's important is Jimmy Kimmel and his staff decided over the weekend that after Charlie Kirk got assassinated, that that he's going to what's our good material for a monologue to be funny about this incident? Let's do 5-10 minutes on this thing. Let's find a way to attack Trump as he gave an apology like or he was sad like a 4-year-old who lost a fish or something. I mean, this is the kind of gross material that he did that night. I think that's the window that we saw that night. And I think what's so interesting, I love Roseanne, and I have to say, I think the contrast there is so great. Roseanne had a show in 2018, and she was an LGBT icon back for her old show, which was a very nuanced portrayal of this great family dynamic and open. And then she put on the Trump hat. The new Roseanne in 2018 was a Trump supporter, and I have to tell you, that's what did it. That's what was her time. It was a ticking time bomb. They were going to get rid of her no matter what, because you can't have that.
That's not true. That's not true, Steve. Come on. She compared a black woman to an ape. You know, it's not that she had a Trump hat on. It's because what she said was like, you vomit. It's a horrible, horrible thing to say. It resonated because it was so bad, and she gets it too, because she is a brilliant comedian, and she was so successful for a reason, because she was really funny, really original. But you can't just say anything, particularly in a country where race
she did apologize,
still
Geraldo.
front and center.
But she apologized, and if you look at her history, I mean, she doesn't have a history of being a racist. Like Steve said, I mean,
Just
she's
the
been,
opposite.
you know,
there's no
it's been just the opposite. She's been a feminist too.
No, listen. She apologized
Geraldo?
for a tweet that she said she did incorrectly, but that was not yes, she got completely taken off the air.
She should have communicated directly to Valerie.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Well, listen, back to Kimmel, Geraldo.
I think it's awful what happened to her, but you can't just say anything. You can't yell fire.
Well, she's obviously suffered the consequence. I mean, she sort of has been erased from history.
She obviously has suffered the consequences, and I feel sorry for her. Right.
Yeah. What do you think, Geraldo, about what Roseanne said, that this was all a plan with Disney and Kimmel to sort of make it seem like he was canceled, but then bring him back? She thinks that was all part of the plan all along. Do you agree, Geraldo?
That's tough. I don't know what went on in their corporate boardrooms. I know that they are primarily self-interested, these executives, over my 55 years in the business. They respond as they think, I believe, that the marketplace wants them to respond often. I don't know. I don't have a sincerity meter. I can't judge how pure their intentions were. In terms of what they did from the point of view of their stockholders, they are public companies after all. I think they, but moving against Kimmel, scolding him would have certainly been appropriate in the strongest terms. Whether or not they discontinue his show seems to me at least half of it is a commercial decision. What ABC did with Roseanne was the opposite of a commercial decision, because they knew they were taking off the #1 show in their lineup. With Kimmel, as I understand it, I haven't checked the numbers, today, but he has faded. The shine is off his apple. He obviously has been around for a long time, since 2003 or something. He's told a lot of jokes, some bad, some good, a lot in between. This, though, was, I think, just thinking off the top of my head here, this is what happens when people get out of their lane. Jimmy Kimmel was trying to be politically smart and sharp and sarcastic, and he flubbed it because he did not correctly gauge the hurt of millions of Americans in a way that he didn't get it. He didn't get what America was at. He told a joke for the Sunset Boulevard crowd, and America wasn't in West Hollywood. America was someplace where Charlie Kirk's widow was grieving at that moment. So I don't know. I'd like to get us all past
that's a good point.
This whole thing and move on. Okay.
Brian, can I say
well,
one
just
thing?
real quick, Steve. I just want to ask, real quick, Steve. I'm very interested in how you think things are going to play out with Nexstar and Sinclair. Nexstar owns this network, NewsNation, but we obviously don't know what the bosses are deciding behind the scenes. I mean, right now, 50% of the country can't see Jimmy Kimmel. So what do you think they're going to do?
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch. One point of clarity, I would say Roseanne got kicked off her show, but the show continued. They just killed off her character, which is crazy. I will say I, first of all, agree 100% with my friend Geraldo here. I think censorship sucks also. And I think I believe in the marketplace of ideas and that the free market should win out. So I actually think it's fascinating and really smart and interesting that in this moment, Nexstar is making a choice. They are saying, okay, ABC, you can do what you want to do, and we're going to do what we want to do. And we're going to actually, in my opinion, I have no idea any inside information either, but I bet they kind of say, all right, let's get it. Let's see what kind of phone calls we get. Let's see how many people support it and how many people don't. Our own viewers are going to tell us what the next decision should be. And I think that's great. That is exactly how this should play out. So let's see what Jimmy Kimmel does tonight. I guarantee you the Nexstar and the Sinclair executives are going to be watching, and they're going to be listening. They're going to be listening to you, the people out there, to say, do you want to see more Jimmy Kimmel? Is that something you want, or do you feel like he can't come back from this? Maybe it's going to be a week. Maybe it's 2 weeks. Maybe it's tomorrow. We don't know.
Yeah.
But I think that more than ever, the power is in the hands of the consumer, and that's really a good thing.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens tonight. Geraldo, Steve, appreciate you both for coming on. Thank you.
Good to be here. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, meanwhile, a very big moment for justice in America. This was a big story today. Those words from President Trump after a jury in Florida convicted his would-be assassin on all counts. This has been a wild federal trial. 59-year-old Ryan Roth tried stabbing himself in the neck with a pen. This all happened in court. He tried to stab himself after that federal jury handed down his guilty verdict. Here is how a witness inside the courtroom described that moment.
Chaos. It was rough. They restrained his limbs so he couldn't stab himself anymore, and they took him out. He was dragged by marshals, like out the courtroom by side entrance.
So jurors deliberated for 2 hours before finding Roth guilty of 5 charges, including attempted assassination of a major presidential candidate. He now faces life in prison. Roth represented himself throughout the trial, which again was very bizarre. Last September, he went to Trump's golf club in West Palm Beach. He hid in the bushes with a rifle as Trump teed off. There was a Secret Service agent who luckily spotted him, fired at him. That is when Roth fled without firing a shot of his own, and now he faces life in prison. All right, coming up, President Trump is about to give remarks at a United Nations reception. That's after he told leaders earlier today that most of their countries were going to hell because of open borders. Plus, Trump reverses course and says Ukraine can win the war against Russia. We are live in Estonia as NATO countries patrol the body of water at the center of the crisis. We're taking you on the ships coming up after this. All right, so as the United Nations General Assembly debates Russia's war in Ukraine and what NATO should do to stop it, a war of words is also underway between top leaders on both sides of the conflict. After meeting with Ukraine President Vladimir Zelensky today, President Trump said he thinks Ukraine can win back all of the territory that it's lost to Russia. He wrote on Truth Social that, quote, with time, patience, and financial support of Europe, and in particular NATO, the original borders from where this war started is very much an option. Now, that is a very, very different sentiment than months ago when Trump told Ukraine to make compromises to end the war. And meanwhile, Russia's former president, Dmitry Medvedev, also sounded off on X, writing that, quote, the U.S. must give up on weakening Russia with sanctions and tariffs, otherwise the risk of direct conflict remains high. Much of that conflict has been centered around the Baltic Sea and neighboring countries, which is where we find NewsNation's Robert Sherman tonight. Robert, you had the opportunity to actually board the Estonian Navy's NATO patrols right on the Baltic. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, it puts it all into perspective, Brian. I mean, where I'm standing right now, this is where NATO ends, Russia begins. It's one of the most tense places in the world. That's especially evident on the Baltic Sea, one of the few places where NATO and Russian warships cross paths almost daily. And as the president wants to zero in on Russian oil and gas, this waterway is one of Russia's most coveted.
In a flex of its muscles, Russian forces in Eastern Europe drill and train. On land near NATO Poland's border with Belarus, and on the open waters of the Caspian, Barents, and Baltic Seas. While NATO doesn't perceive any imminent threats from the actions, they remain on guard. 3 Russian jets violating Estonia's airspace and drones shot down over Poland during an attack on Ukraine are just a few of the recent incidents keeping NATO on edge. Baltic states like Estonia aren't taking chances, digging anti-tank trenches along its border with Russia. But the sea is more complicated. NewsNation setting off on a NATO patrol with the Estonian Navy in the Baltic, where Russia and the West cross paths daily.
Despite the fact NATO controls almost the entire coastline here, this remains a major point of contest. Russia's Baltic fleet puts out from Kaliningrad, and this is still the major artery that connects St. Petersburg to the Atlantic.
It's always going to be a contested environment here where you have to fight your way out or in.
And how contested is it?
Very.
Commodore Ivo Vark says one of the big issues they are dealing with is Russia's so-called shadow fleet. Ships masked by opaque ownership and flagged under other nations used to move Russian oil and gas in an attempt to avoid sanctions from the West.
I would consider the operations of the shadow fleet as a national interest for Russia. And as we know, this vital national interest will be protected and, if necessary, with a military means.
That includes at time receiving escorts from Russian aircraft and naval ships. It's big business for Russia, with energy making up about 20% of the country's GDP, and estimates putting the shadow fleet at well over 1,000 ships.
Sure enough, just off the horizon, you've seen this orange tanker right here. It's officially flagged under the Marshall Islands, but it's part of Russia's shadow fleet.
It's up to NATO to confirm the ship is who they say they are. In this case, the info checks out. The Estonians say they encounter dozens of ships like this a day on a week-long patrol. As President Trump weighs imposing new sanctions on Russia and its trade partners, Vark says from what he's seen firsthand, they are having an impact.
We see the trends, and the trends sometimes prove the fact that sanctions are working. More presence serves for a more deterrent.
The White House does confirm to NewsNation they're hoping to pare back financial support for some of these Baltic states in hope that Europe will be able to handle its own backyard. But the Estonian Navy says to target the shadow fleet and to put a dent in Russian oil and gas to back them away from Ukraine, they believe more manpower is needed out here, not less. Brian?
All right, Robert, thank you. Amazing perspective there from the fleet. We appreciate it. All right, still to come, President Trump had a lot on his mind today beyond Russia and Ukraine. In fact, he had plenty to gripe about, including a dodgy teleprompter and a broken escalator. How bizarre is that? It just stopped as soon as he stepped onto it. And look, it's like when you're at the airport and the escalator stops, but it's the President of the United States. He had to walk up the escalators. He told world leaders that their countries were going to hell. Shortly after this, Geraldo was watching it all. He's going to help us break it down next. President Trump is holding a reception at this hour with dozens of world leaders in New York City. We will bring you any developments that come out of it. But first, the day began with Trump's fiery speech at the UN General Assembly. The speech, it was marked by a litany of complaints the president had about the organization. Among the first, his gripes about a malfunctioning escalator that he and the First Lady had just tried to take. The whole thing was caught on video there. It suddenly stopped as the first couple tried to ride it up to the General Assembly chamber. Then, after that, look at him, he had to walk up the escalator. The teleprompter for Trump's speech simply didn't work. Right there, during his big speech at the UN, the president called out both fails, seizing on the UN's broken equipment as metaphors for a broken institution.
What is the purpose of the United Nations? The UN has such tremendous potential. I've always said it. It has such tremendous, tremendous potential, but it's not even coming close to living up to that potential.
And Trump also took aim at some of the issues the UN is behind, like climate change, which he called one of the greatest con jobs. And as for immigration, he said countries that allow migrants were going to hell. For more, let's go live to Joe Khalil. Joe, Trump had some harsh words there for the UN. I think we all expected it, but things didn't seem to go too well.
No, maybe not even to the extent that we saw. I think it was a little surprising, Brian. That was a theme throughout the speech, was criticism of the UN itself. President Trump at one point questioned what the purpose of the UN was at all. He also basically said he feels the UN has been totally ineffective in preventing or stopping wars. He says that they have been complicit in mass migration, not just in the U.S. in terms of the southern border, but in Europe. And then he slammed them for embracing climate policies that try to push back against climate change. So there was a lot there. Now, at the end of the speech, he ended up speaking with the Secretary General of the UN and sounded a lot softer in his tone. He said that actually the U.S. supports the UN, but in the speech, the words really harsh there. Obviously, on the policy and on the world affairs, he touched on a lot. And obviously, there was a lot on Russia and Ukraine. But it was a warning. It was also a criticism to the U.S.'s own allies in Europe, and particularly those NATO nations. The president says, look, the U.S. is ready right now to levy serious tariffs and sanctions on countries that are buying Russian energy and propping Russia up, but not until our European allies and our NATO allies cut their dependence on Russian oil and gas. And this is what he said here.
China and India are the primary funders of the ongoing war by continuing to purchase Russian oil. But inexcusably, even NATO countries have not cut off much Russian energy and Russian energy products, which, as you know, I said about 2 weeks ago, and I wasn't happy. Think of it. They're funding the war against themselves.
He also talked quite a bit about Gaza and Israel, and he says there needs to be a ceasefire, but that it cannot come unless there's a release of hostages. He also criticized American allies who have come forward and supported a Palestinian state, saying that, in his view, that only empowers Hamas. This is what he said there.
We can't forget October 7th, can we? Now, as if to encourage continued conflict, some of this body is seeking to unilaterally recognize a Palestinian state. The rewards would be too great for Hamas terrorists for their atrocities. This would be a reward for these horrible atrocities.
And Brian, he struck a more positive tone talking actually about the U.S. There was quite a bit of domestic policy in that speech as well, clearly aimed for a domestic audience, which was also at the very beginning of his speech as well.
I know, obviously, a lot going on there, so much that impacts the whole world, but I can't help but keep thinking back to, like, Escalator Gate, Joe. I mean, because it was caught on video, and then the teleprompter also not working. I mean, are they looking into this? It doesn't seem like it could possibly be a coincidence.
Yeah, it was one thing after another. I think he handled the teleprompter thing well. It was a joke, and he started reading. The White House press secretary, Brian, Caroline Leavitt, actually did pose a question asking whether there was something nefarious going on, particularly with the escalator. The timing there, it does raise some questions. Literally the moment that you see Melania Trump, First Lady, get on, it stopped. There's some reporting from the Times of London that there were staffers at the UN joking over the weekend that, as sort of a payback to President Trump, who has been critical of the UN, that they would specifically mess with the elevators. Now, NewsNation has not confirmed that reporting. Again, comes from the Times of London, but it was enough for the press secretary here at the White House in Washington to at least raise the question and say, if there's any evidence of that, then somebody deserves to be fired. So, you know, at the end of the day, the president got a couple extra steps in, which is good for all your health. I encourage everybody to take the stairs when you can. And, you know, he had the prompter thing, too. So he was obviously not happy about it, just by virtue of the fact that he mentioned it in the speech 2 or 3 times, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you can't blame him. Listen, I've been on the airport before when you're on the escalator. At least he wasn't on it yet, but when it suddenly stops, it can really jolt you. So I guess it could have been worse. Thankfully, it wasn't actually moving when that happened. All right, Joe, thank you so much, live from the White House. Coming up still tonight, the Secret Service just seized an underground telecommunications network of 300 servers and 100,000 SIM cards capable of 30 million texts per minute. It could have jammed all of New York City's communications during the UN General Assembly. This, by the way, could end up being literally the most important story of the day and the most just sort of jaw-dropping and scary. We're going to get into it next. All right, so this is a big deal. This is something that could have impacted all of us. The Secret Service says it has thwarted a plot to take out cell service near the United Nations. The Secret Service says it could have been a disastrous telecommunications total blackout. These are images they released. They showed the sheer extent of the operation. Agents found rows of servers and shelves stacked with SIM cards. Less than 35 miles from the UN, more than 100,000 SIM cards were already active. There were also large numbers waiting to be deployed. The phones could have sent up to 30 million text messages per minute, and that could have crippled cell networks across the entire city. Insane. Director at Trusted SEC, Alex Hammerstone, joins me now to discuss all of this. Alex, really alarming. The FBI says the operation was well-funded, highly organized, cost millions of dollars in hardware. Who do you think could be behind this?
I think it's been an interesting day. And, you know, kind of as we've seen kind of the cybersecurity and telephony experts kind of dig into this, I think there's been a lot of insight into the fact that what this may have been is more likely a scamming tool or a scam farm. And while law enforcement certainly may have information that I don't, that's certainly likely. You know, looking at it from the perspective of an information security professional, these types of SIM farms are not uncommon. It is a large one to be found within the U.S., but if you look at it and really look at the number of SIMs, right? So 100,000, you know, I go to a lot of professional sporting events, and certainly it's difficult to send a text when these networks are overwhelmed. But I think the idea that 100,000, you know, phones or phone clones in a city with many millions of people would be able to overwhelm all the telecommunications, I think that leads to some skepticism.
So you say this is a SIM farm. I'm just looking at the photos here. It's clearly highly organized. So why would they want to do this if it wasn't to, you know, do something nefarious involving the UN? What are they up to?
So SIM farms are all over. You know, there are a lot of videos of them, you know, overseas. And really, there are a lot of reasons somebody may create one. If you look at how lucrative social media can be, so having subscribers and likes on things like YouTube or Instagram, people can make millions of dollars doing that. You know, also really anything this can be offered as a service for, you know, types of criminality where you want to be able to send anonymous text messages, whether it's, you know, selling drugs or other things like that. You know, these things are oftentimes rented out. They're able to be used by other criminals. And I think what happened here is, you know, this ended up being used to swat a few government officials around Christmas, which led to the Secret Service's attention and ended up being discovered. So certainly a lot more could come out, you know, through law enforcement for what the purpose of this was or any kind of nefarious intentions for it. But I just want to be very clear that these SIM farms are very common. You know, I think that when you look, there's certainly a conversation to be had about how vulnerable our cell networks can be and how reliant we are on the ability to communicate. But if you think about your own cell phone, you know, all day, every day, we're getting all these, you know, unpaid toll texts, all these different scams out there. And a lot of those are being generated by this type of SIM farm.
Oh, those are the worst. So those come from SIM farms like this. How do they, I mean, are they easy to find? I would think if there's that many text messages coming out of one place, isn't there like a way for them to track that?
So that's really the reason that there's so many of them, right? So if you or I, you know, send tens of thousands or millions of messages and spam messages from our cell phone, we'd be caught pretty quickly. But this number, the reason they have so many different SIMs and so many kind of unique instances of the cloned phone is so they can switch them around and send it from different numbers and really have kind of that you know, level of being able to hide. And so they are quite large. But again, this is a very large one, I think, to be found, especially in the US. But again, I think it's not unusual that these exist in various cities around the country.
Yeah, certainly alarming to see, especially with all the pictures. Just looks like it's in like someone's apartment or something. Alex Hammerstone, appreciate you coming on tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, still to come, we heard from Roseanne exclusively tonight on the return of the Jimmy Kimmel show. Well, now Stephen A. gets his turn, he joins Chris Cuomo live in a moment, and Chris will join me live with a preview. That's coming up next. All right, so Chris Cuomo is going to join me in just a second as he gets into his position for his show to beginning at the top of the hour. We spoke with Roseanne Barr on this edition of Vargas Reports about Jimmy Kimmel's return to late night. She's got a very, very interesting perspective because she says that she was canceled back in 2018. She had like the #1 show on TV. She had like 18 million viewers a night on her show on ABC, and she says that she got canceled, and she actually wants Jimmy Kimmel to get canceled. There's Chris. There he is. So what do you think about this? I mean, she doesn't think we're going to get a real apology tonight, Chris, from Kimmel. What do you think?
Here's what I think. Bravo to Brian Entin and your producer, Allison. Boy, oh boy, is this an important interview at an important time. Rosie is not wrong about her past. What she wants with Jimmy Kimmel, and that's a different issue, but it's going to be very interesting to the audience, and it's a great get by you. What do I think we hear tonight? I would be shocked if this is any kind of double down scenario. I did not believe, as you know, that Jimmy's ouster would be that. I thought this would be temporary. I didn't think it would be this fast. And if it was this fast, it's because they came to an agreement about what they want to hear. And it's not going to be him bashing MAGA and that kind of stuff. And he's got the burden of being funny tonight. And when a lot of people want you to fail, it's not easy to be funny. But I'll be watching.
All right, Chris, have a good show. Good to see you, buddy.
Brother, congratulations on the get. Right interview at the right time. Brian Entin, getting it done for NewsNation. Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.